You don't move thousands of troops across the world unless something serious is about to happen. And right now, the United States is doing exactly that. In the next 3 to 4 weeks, U.S. Marines and Navy forces are expected to arrive in the Middle East. And this is not a routine deployment. This is the kind of move that usually comes before a major shift, the kind that changes how conflicts unfold. The real question is not just why this is happening, but what is coming next. Because when troops start moving at this scale, history shows it's rarely just a precaution, it's preparation. Right now, behind the scenes, the Middle East is entering one of its most tense and unpredictable phases in recent years. Reports of attacks on critical infrastructure, threats to global shipping routes, and rising hostility between regional powers have created a situation where even a small spark could trigger something much bigger. And the United States knows this. That's why this deployment matters far more than it might seem at first glance. The plan involves sending a large number of Marines and sailors into key strategic areas across the region. These are not just ordinary troops. Marines are specifically trained for rapid response, high-risk operations, and crisis situations. They can be deployed quickly, strike with precision, and operate in environments where the situation can change in seconds. When you combine them with naval forces, warships, support vessels, and logistical units, you get a powerful, flexible force capable of both defending and attacking, depending on what the situation demands. And that's exactly what makes this move so important. Because this is not just about presence, it's about capability. When the U.S. sends both Marines and naval forces together, it signals readiness for multiple scenarios. It means they are preparing for uncertainty, for situations where things could escalate quickly, where decisions may need to be made in real time, and where hesitation could be costly. So why now? To understand that, you need to look at what has been happening in the region. Over the past few weeks, tensions have been building at an alarming rate. There have been increasing threats to major shipping lanes, especially those connected to global oil supplies. The Middle East controls some of the most important energy routes in the world, and any disruption there doesn't just affect one country, it affects the entire global economy. Imagine oil shipments being delayed or blocked. Fuel prices would rise almost immediately, transportation costs would increase, food prices could go up, markets would react, and suddenly a regional conflict becomes a global problem. That's one of the key reasons the U.S. is stepping in. Another reason is deterrence. By sending more troops, the U.S. is sending a message, not just to its allies, but also to its rivals. The message is simple: we are watching, we are ready, and we are prepared to act if necessary. In geopolitics, sometimes the presence of force is meant to prevent conflict rather than start it. But the problem is, it doesn't always work that way, because what one side sees as deterrence, another side may see as provocation. And that's where the risk begins. Increasing military presence in an already tense region can create a dangerous cycle. One side builds up forces, the other responds. Each move is interpreted as a threat, and slowly the situation becomes more unstable instead of less. This is how conflicts escalate, not always through deliberate decisions, but through reactions, misunderstandings, and pressure. Now let's talk about the timing. The fact that these troops are expected to arrive in 3 to 4 weeks is not random. This is not an emergency response where forces are rushed in within days. This is a planned, coordinated deployment. It suggests that the U.S. is preparing in advance, positioning itself for developments that may not have fully unfolded yet. In other words, this is about what might happen next, and that raises serious questions. What does the U.S. expect? Is there intelligence suggesting an escalation? Are there concerns about potential attacks, disruptions, or confrontations that haven't happened yet, but could? We don't have all the answers, but we do know this: militaries don't make moves like this without reason. Another important point to understand is how these forces might be used. Marines are not just defensive units. They're designed for rapid deployment into conflict zones. They can secure areas, conduct operations, evacuate civilians, or respond to emergencies. Naval forces, on the other hand, provide the ability to control sea routes, support operations, and project power without needing a permanent presence on land. Together, they form a system that can adapt quickly. This means the U.S. is not committing to a single plan. Instead, it's keeping its options open. It can respond to attacks, protect shipping routes, support allies, or escalate if necessary. But that flexibility comes with uncertainty, because when multiple options are on the table, the outcome depends on how the situation evolves and how different actors respond. Now let's consider the global impact. Any major military movement in the Middle East sends shockwaves far beyond the region. Energy markets react almost instantly. Even the possibility of conflict can drive oil prices higher. Investors become cautious, markets become volatile, governments start preparing for different scenarios. And then there's the political dimension. Allies of the United States will likely see this as a sign of commitment and support. It reassures them that the U.S. is willing to stand by them in times of uncertainty. But for others, this move may be seen very differently. It could be interpreted as an escalation, a sign that tensions are moving toward confrontation. And this difference in perception is critical, because in geopolitics, perception often shapes reality. If one side believes conflict is becoming more likely, they may act in ways that actually increase that likelihood. They may strengthen their own forces, take preemptive measures, or adopt a more aggressive stance. And just like that, the situation becomes more dangerous. There's also the miscalculation risk. In a highly tense environment, even a small incident can have huge consequences. A single misunderstanding, a misinterpreted move, or an accidental clash could trigger a chain reaction. History has shown this many times. Conflicts don't always start with big decisions. Sometimes they start with small moments that spiral out of control. There's also the issue of long-term strategy. The United States already has military commitments in different parts of the world. Increasing its presence in the Middle East adds pressure on resources, logistics, and personnel. While this deployment may be manageable in the short term, it raises questions about sustainability if tensions continue for an extended period. So what should we expect next? Over the coming weeks, several key developments will be worth watching. Where exactly these troops are positioned will matter. Any additional deployments or reinforcements will be significant. Changes in military activity, both from the U.S. and other regional players, will provide clues about how the situation is evolving. Diplomatic efforts will also play a crucial role. If negotiations succeed, this deployment may remain a precaution, a show of readiness that helps stabilize the situation. But if diplomacy fails, the presence of these forces could become the foundation for further action. And that's the uncertainty. Right now, this move can be interpreted in multiple ways. It could be a preventive step aimed at avoiding conflict, or it could be the early stage of a broader strategy, preparing for scenarios that are not yet visible to the public. In conclusion, the deployment of thousands of U.S. troops to the Middle East is not just another headline. It's a signal, a strong, deliberate signal that something important is happening behind the scenes. It reflects rising tensions, growing risks, and the possibility of significant developments in the near future. Whether this leads to stability or escalation will depend on what happens next. But one thing is certain: when forces start moving at this scale, the world pays attention, because it usually means the situation is far more serious than it appears on the surface.